Hollyhocks were part of almost every cottage garden. But why? Why would they take up the space that was needed for hollyhocks? True, they're stately, they're beautiful, they're tall, they have a lot of flowers. But is that enough to grow them in a cottage garden? This is Sandy, Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona, and we're talking hollyhocks today. These two containers of hollyhocks were actually seeds from my grandmother's farm. My dad found an envelope full of hollyhocks. She always had hollyhocks. And they were really about 45 years old, and they still made it into plants. Now, every hollyhock that I have in Arizona, I bought 6 hollyhock plants one time, and then my ones from my grandmother, and then the rest have just self-seeded themselves. I mean, really everywhere in my yard. If I don't want them in a certain place, I have to dig them up because they self-seed while I'm gone to Wyoming, and they just spread all over the place. The wind just takes them all over. And I love them. Now, hollyhocks can be 2 to 9 feet tall. If you were going to plant them, space them about 30 inches apart. And I'm just looking down in there. I actually have a fig growing in there someplace. And the hollyhocks are just covering it. Now, hollyhocks can come in dark red, black, orange, pink, yellows, and every variety in between that. They really can grow from zone 3 to zone 10. So that helps in a cottage garden because you can just really just grow them everywhere. They can grow very tall, so if you're in a windy place, you might want it a little more sheltered, or you want to have some kind of support for those. However you want to do it. But they're in the mallow family, and really anything that you're using a marshmallow plant for, you could exchange it with a hollyhock. What parts are edible? Because that's really what we're thinking about. A cottage garden grew plants for reasons. You can eat the flower. You can eat the leaves, you can eat the roots. Now the stem, theoretically, could you? It's a little hard. But they just start popping up all over the place in my gardens. And these are some from my grandmother's seeds. They just continually come up. They haven't got a stalk on them yet. Where this is one of them. And I actually have one that's about 7 feet tall right now. But see, all around my garden, there's little tiny hollyhock plants. I'm going to dig some of those up and take them to Wyoming. And so I'm totally okay with that. Now, what can I do? I can actually candy the flowers. I can eat the flowers. I can put them in my salads. I can put the leaves in my salads. I can make teas out of the flowers. I can make tinctures, poultices. I can eat them raw. I can eat them cooked. You can make some dyes, some syrups. I'm actually thinking I should be able to make jelly with them. If I can make teas and syrups out of the flowers, I certainly should be able to make a jelly out of them. You can actually add the small young leaves or the flowers when you're cooking fish, and that's just kind of a fun thing to do. A special note, I would take the stamen out of the flower before I eat it. It's got a lot of pollen going on there. But they show that it probably came from China. The hollyhock probably came from China. There's evidence in ancient Egypt, House of David. It has a long history of use. The roots are just packed with vitamins and minerals and starches, which you boil or roast after you've peeled the roots. You don't harvest the roots until actually after it's gone through the season. In the fall is the best time for the roots. Where the flowers or the leaves, you could do it all season. In Wyoming, they bloom from about June to August. But here in Arizona, it's February to May. And as a child, we would make hollyhock flower dolls. I'll have to do a video on how to do that. But because they self-seed, you can just really be able to let that plant start to grow and then move it all over the place. The flowers are packed with vitamin A and C. The leaves have vitamin K and C plus calcium. And then those roots, vitamins, minerals, and starches, is just packed. Now, people that should not eat hollyhocks. If you're pregnant, breastfeeding, or if you're on any kind of blood thinners, because it can affect it. Now, I'm not a doctor. I just know what is good for me. I think Europe didn't get the hollyhock until about the 15th century. I think it was an herbalist that named it hollyhock. But what they found was had properties for anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, antimicrobial. It helped with digestion, urinary tract, respiratory, and even sore throat. So people through the ages have used hollyhocks, and that's why they had them in cottage gardens. In Japan, in May, they actually have a hollyhock festival. How fun is that? If you want to start hollyhocks this spring, start them inside about April. You're going to put them on some soil, the seeds right onto the soil, and then cover them with a light coating of compost or vermiculite, a very light coating. It is better for them to get a little bit of light when they're germinating. Otherwise, wait till June and just plant them right in your soil. Now, I know some people say that hollyhocks are a biannual, which means they don't flower until the next year. I don't find that true. I can't even tell you how many times a new plant comes up and it flowers that year. But then a plant next to it may just make the bush part and not send up a stalk. The situation just has to be perfect, and you can get it in 1 year. I like to harvest the flowers in the morning after that dew has evaporated. The leaves, I always want a young, tender leaves, unless I'm making a poultice. And then I can use a larger one because I'm going to steam it first and chop it up, and then I'm going to apply it. And of course, the roots in the fall. But remember, moderation always. But I want to plant anything in my gardens that those bees love, and bees do love hollyhocks. Painted lady butterflies also love them, and hummingbirds. So that makes it an all-around flower for me in both Arizona and Wyoming. But I hope this kind of gives you a little bit of thought. You're picking your flowers out for this spring. Why not try to grow some hollyhocks? You'll have hollyhocks the rest of your life if you want them. Because remember, years ago down in Arizona, my first year down here, I believe, I planted some hollyhocks, and I haven't bought a hollyhock since then. This is Sandy, Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. Have a great, fabulous day. And plant some self-seeding hollyhocks this year.